The courtroom fell silent as the video played, grainy footage that showed more than words ever could. Within moments, Diddy's twin daughters Jessie and Delilah rose from their seats, visibly shaken, and stormed out without saying a word. Cameras didn't follow, but reporters whispered they looked pale, ashamed. The footage wasn't just graphic, it was damning. And it had a name. Freak off. A term Cassie Ventura said defined the darkest part of her relationship with Sean Diddy Combs. What began as rumors and whispers has exploded into federal testimony, hard evidence, and broken faces in the gallery. This isn't just a celebrity scandal anymore. It's a courtroom reckoning. From threatening text messages to shocking surveillance, the Diddy trial is unraveling decades of silence. And now, his own family can't bear to watch. What you're about to hear might change the way you see him forever. When the lights dimmed and the prosecution requested the courtroom's attention, everyone knew something significant was coming. But no one was prepared for what followed. The judge approved a motion to show the jury a piece of evidence long talked about in whispers, but never confirmed in public. A video labeled Freak Off 2013, location, Miami penthouse. Prosecutors had warned about its content, and defense attorneys did everything they could to block its presentation. But the judge ruled in favor of transparency. A partial blackout was ordered in the courtroom. Cameras were turned off. The only people allowed to watch were the jury, attorneys, Diddy, and a select few observers, including Diddy's family. As the video began, Cassie Ventura, the prosecution's key witness, was seated quietly near the jury box. She didn't flinch. In contrast, Diddy's posture immediately changed. Gone was the arrogance from previous days. He slouched slightly, eyes fixed on the screen, hands clasped tight. About halfway through the footage, his daughters Jessie and Delilah stood up. Eyewitnesses say one of them muttered, "No, I can't," before walking out. Their faces were stone, blank but broken. Reporters outside captured them leaving the courthouse flanked by aides and security, refusing to comment. The video wasn't fully described in court documents, but key moments were relayed in summary. Cassie appeared with an unidentified individual in what prosecutors described as an orchestrated and directed scenario. Diddy's voice is allegedly heard behind the camera giving instructions. While much of the footage is blurred or redacted, the emotional impact was undeniable. Multiple jurors looked visibly disturbed. One reportedly wiped tears from her eyes. Another stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. This wasn't just salacious content, it was proof. Proof of control. Proof of psychological dominance. And most importantly, proof that Cassie wasn't exaggerating. The timing of the video, her age, the production-like setup, all matched her previous testimony. As the screen faded to black, the room remained quiet. No murmurs, no whispers. Only the sound of the judge instructing the court to take a 15-minute recess. The moment Cassie took the stand, it was clear this would not be easy, for her or for anyone in the room. She walked in calmly, 8 months pregnant, placing her coat behind her and turning slightly to face the jury. Throughout her testimony, she often rubbed her belly, subtle but symbolic. She wasn't just reliving trauma, she was protecting a new life while recounting a painful one. She told the court about the first time Diddy introduced the term freak off. She said she was 21, unsure of what it meant. He described it as voyeurism, telling her it would strengthen their relationship. What began as romantic quickly turned into control. He told her what to wear, what to say, what drugs to take. She shared texts from his Louis Vuitton med bag. "Which color pill?" she asked him in one. "The green one," he replied. Cassie testified that freak-offs weren't spontaneous. They were rehearsed, scheduled, and choreographed. The lights, the outfits, the camera placement, and most disturbingly, the participants, many of whom she said were escorts, sometimes hired by her out of fear of what would happen if she refused. "I did it because I thought I loved him, because I didn't want to make him angry, because I didn't know how to say no anymore," she told the court. When asked about her emotional state during those years, she admitted feeling worthless. "There were times I would look in the mirror and not recognize who I had become," she said. And when the prosecution asked her directly if she ever wanted to be part of the freak-offs, she paused before answering. "At times, yes, because it meant I got to spend time with him, but I never wanted the rest of it, not the pressure, not the fear." Meanwhile, Diddy was falling apart. Multiple courtroom observers said he began scribbling on a yellow notepad, shaking his leg under the table. At one point, he leaned over to his attorney and whispered something while pointing at Cassie. His face was pale. The same man once described as the life of the party now looked like someone who'd just been sentenced in his own mind. The defense tried to argue this was all consensual. They claimed Cassie enjoyed the relationship, was involved in hiring others, and never once used the word no. But the prosecution countered, "What happens to a woman who knows what no might cost her?" While the jury processed Cassie's chilling testimony, Diddy's family remained stoic, until they couldn't anymore. His mother, Jessie Combs, sat clutching a rosary, eyes shut. His sons, King and Justin, avoided eye contact with their father. They stared ahead, arms folded, occasionally glancing at the jury's reactions. But his daughters Jessie and Delilah, just 17, seemed especially shaken. Until this moment, they had maintained a composed presence. But seeing that video, and the reality it presented, broke something. After their exit, people began wondering if more family secrets were about to come to light. The prosecution hinted at it by raising questions about Diddy's ex, Kim Porter. Cassie testified that Diddy told her not to make their relationship public because of his kids and because Kim would be hurt. But Cassie also claimed Diddy's relationship with Kim overlapped with hers. "We weren't public for a long time, but he was still with Kim. We both knew. He made sure we both knew." And that's where things turned even darker. Cassie recounted a time when Kim confronted Diddy about his behavior. A week later, she was hospitalized. "He told me not to say anything. He said she was fine." But Kim Porter's death years later would raise even more questions. Officially, she died of pneumonia. But many, including Al B. Sure, Kim's ex and the father of Quincy believe her death deserves a second look. In court, prosecutors introduced messages where Cassie said she feared ending up like Kim. And when asked why, she said, "Because she knew too much, and he knew that she knew." The courtroom quieted again as the next layer of Cassie's testimony peeled back the structure behind the so-called freak-offs. It wasn't just Diddy. According to Cassie, there was a full support system in place. She named names: David James, Christina Courtroom, multiple assistants, travel agents, and private security firms. They weren't just watching, she said. They were helping make it happen. One of the most damning parts of her statement came when she described how Diddy tracked her. "He didn't live far, but if I wasn't answering, he'd send someone. Sometimes security, sometimes Christina. If I didn't text back, within an hour, someone was at my door." That claim shook the courtroom because it confirmed something prosecutors hinted at in opening arguments: that Diddy's reach wasn't emotional manipulation alone. It was surveillance-level control. She said Diddy had access to her phone, her location, even her private messages. When she once tried to have a friend visit, the friend never showed up. He told me he warned her off. I didn't ask how. The prosecutor asked if she feared for her safety. Cassie didn't hesitate. "Every day," she said, "but I feared for hers too." The system Diddy allegedly created was described not as spontaneous excess, but deliberate machinery. Travel documents, fake bookings, escort listings. Sometimes we'd say they were new stylists or dancers. Whatever it took to get them on the plane, Cassie said. The trips spanned cities: Miami, LA, New York, Ibiza. Each time a new location, with the same routine: drugs, outfits, lighting setups, and the scene. The courtroom sat frozen as she described these sessions running 36 to 72 hours, the longest one lasting 4 full days. No sleep, just pills, directions, waiting for him to give the signal to stop. The signal rarely came early. Prosecutors highlighted how this structure, a network of enablers, mirrored the very definition of racketeering. It wasn't just a man and his personal habits. It was a business-like operation of manipulation, entrapment, and exploitation. And with every name Cassie listed, the list of potential witnesses grew longer. The testimony shifted from logistics to psychology. It was here that jurors began to understand the deeper, more complicated hold Diddy had over Cassie. This wasn't just abuse, it was emotional warfare. Cassie admitted something that made the room tense. "I loved him." She said it with a small voice, but it landed hard. "I loved him the way you love someone who saves you, even if they're also the one hurting you." She described how, early in the relationship, Diddy could be kind, sweet, generous. When he wanted to be, he made me feel like I was the only person who mattered. But that affection had strings. Everything she did to maintain that feeling, compliance, participation, silence, was paid for with emotional currency. It was like a drug, she admitted. Love was the reward. Fear was the punishment. The prosecution highlighted text messages from Cassie to Diddy during those years, messages full of affection and even eagerness. The defense would later point to these as proof of mutual interest, but Cassie explained them. "I said what I needed to say to feel safe," she told the court. Sometimes it wasn't even about the act, it was about surviving the moment. One moment in particular stood out. Cassie described trying to back out of a freak-off once by writing an email. She wanted to gently address her discomfort. She said Diddy responded, "I know you don't want to do it." And instead of standing firm, she recanted. She told the court, "I was scared he'd cut me off. I said it wasn't that. I lied, because the truth would have made him angry." The jury listened, transfixed. Several jurors were seen nodding slowly, perhaps relating to the duality Cassie described. Loving someone who also hurts you, being caught between wanting closeness and needing safety. Her voice cracked only once during this part of the testimony, when the prosecutor asked, "Did you ever enjoy it?" Cassie's response stunned the court. "Only because it meant time with him. I didn't enjoy what we did, but I loved him, and that made everything confusing." By now, the courtroom understood that Cassie's story wasn't an isolated case. It echoed something darker. Prosecutors connected the dots to Diddy's longtime ex and mother of his children, Kim Porter. Cassie was asked directly if she ever felt her life might be in danger. Her response? Yes, especially after what happened with Kim. She claimed Diddy kept certain details secret. He wouldn't talk about her last days, just said she was sick. But I don't believe that anymore. The court was reminded that Kim Porter was found dead in 2018. The official cause was pneumonia, but many, including Al B. Shore, Porter's ex and Quincy's biological father, have publicly stated they believe her death deserves to be reinvestigated. "She was fine one day," Cassie said on the stand, "and gone the next." Adding to the suspicion, Cassie said she was warned to keep quiet after Porter's death. "He told me not to talk to anyone. Said people were watching. Said I needed to stay out of it." Prosecutors then introduced a chain of texts between Cassie and a friend, where she said, "If I ever disappear like Kim, it wasn't random." Then came perhaps the most haunting moment. Prosecutors asked Cassie if she felt her story could have ended like Kim's. Cassie hesitated. "Yes," she finally said. "That's why I left. That's why I'm here." The courtroom's emotional weight was heavy. Cassie's fear wasn't just personal, it was historical. It tied back to someone who was also silenced too soon, under circumstances too questionable. The judge called another break. Several jurors remained seated, heads down. Diddy? Still silent, still pale, still cornered, not just by the law, but by the ghosts of his own past. Day 3 of Cassie's testimony was already intense, but the courtroom reached a boiling point when the judge made a ruling that shook the room. After fierce objections from the defense, the court allowed the jury to view a short portion of a recorded freak-off video. The footage had allegedly been taken by Diddy himself, stored on a private hard drive, and later recovered by Cassie before she left him for good. Cameras weren't allowed in the courtroom, but those in attendance described a chilling atmosphere as the lights dimmed and the screen lit up. The gallery leaned forward. Even the court sketch artist paused mid-drawing. As the footage played, reactions were immediate. Several members of the gallery looked away. One juror covered her mouth. But the biggest moment came when Diddy's twin daughters, Jessie and Delilah, who had been sitting in silent support beside their grandmother Janice, suddenly stood up and left the courtroom. Observers noted the stunned look on their faces, wide-eyed, lips trembling. They did not return. The video wasn't explicit in the way many expected, but what it revealed was the control, the silence. Cassie's posture in the video was tense, eyes shifting between the camera and the unseen director behind it. There were visible signs of discomfort, and her movements seemed mechanical, like she was following instructions she didn't want to obey. After the footage ended, the prosecution asked Cassie to explain what the jury had seen. "That was the first time I cried in front of him after a freak-off," she said, "because I couldn't take it anymore. And he still picked up the camera." Her voice quivered but didn't break. The defense objected repeatedly, trying to argue the footage lacked context, that it was consensual. But it was too late. The damage was done. The visual, paired with Cassie's explanation and the earlier testimony, formed a powerful image, not just of abuse, but of routine, of something rehearsed, directed. One juror whispered to another, "That's all I needed." And in that moment, you could feel it. This trial was no longer just about Cassie's words. It now had a face, a video, and a room full of people who could no longer deny what they saw. Cassie's final day on the stand ended with a warning. There are more of us, and it didn't take long for that warning to bear weight. By the time the next court session began, the prosecution had received word that additional former employees, drivers, assistants, even a former hairstylist, were now willing to testify. Prosecutors wasted no time. A man named Israel Flores, a former hotel security officer, testified about an incident at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles, backing up Cassie's earlier claim. "I saw her with a bruised eye. I was told to ignore it," he said, "but I logged it anyway." His testimony added an independent account to what had already been suggested by the 2016 surveillance footage. Next came a former assistant, unnamed publicly, who claimed she was asked to transport locked briefcases across state lines. "I didn't know what was in them," she said, but the instructions were clear. Don't open. Don't ask questions. When pressed by the prosecution, she admitted she believed they were filled with cash or drugs. Because why else lock them and send me with a burner phone? But the most compelling testimony came from a male escort named Daniel Phillip. He said he was hired multiple times in 2012 and 2013, but what began as a private contract quickly turned coercive. "I didn't want to go back, but I was told if I didn't, they'd ruin my license, my career." Phillip identified Diddy as the orchestrator. "He told me where to go, what to do, and he watched." Every new witness added to the weight of Cassie's testimony. More than that, they revealed a consistent method. Invitations extended, NDAs signed, money exchanged, and always Diddy in control. The prosecution began to build something stronger than just a series of events. They were building a case of pattern, of organization, and possibly of criminal conspiracy. With each name, each tear, each reluctant memory, Diddy's empire looked less like an entertainment label and more like a machine for silence. By now, the image of Sean "Diddy" Combs sitting confidently behind his defense table had evaporated. The man who once dominated rooms with bravado now sat sunken, eyes darting between lawyers and jurors, visibly sweating. His carefully curated image, built over decades of success, fame, and control, was dissolving in front of the world. And then, during a brief recess, Diddy asked to address the judge. It was a bizarre moment, unscripted. His lawyers leaned in, trying to stop him, but he rose anyway. "Excuse me, Your Honor," he said. "I'm a little nervous." The courtroom froze. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Combs, you'll have your time through counsel." But that one line, it told the whole story. Back in session, the prosecution announced they had a new witness they were hoping to call. Someone who had been mentioned early in the trial and in past interviews, but whose testimony was never guaranteed. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard. The moment his name was mentioned, the gallery gasped. Deal had long warned about Diddy's dark side. He had told stories about freak-offs, about Kim Porter, about NDAs and burner phones and security guards silencing staff. But until now, he was just a voice on podcasts and YouTube. Now, he might be called to the stand. The defense immediately objected, citing hearsay and credibility issues. But the judge allowed a sidebar, and when the court returned, it was clear. Gene Deal's testimony was in motion. "We'll take him on Monday," the judge said. Diddy lowered his head. As the day closed, the final image wasn't Cassie's testimony. It wasn't the video. It was Diddy, silent, isolated, watching as his daughters walked past him without a word, refusing to make eye contact. The man who once controlled everything, who determined what music we heard, what artists we loved, what parties made headlines, no longer held the room. The freak-off footage may have shifted the narrative, but the truth pouring out from former insiders and now his own crumbling defense had shifted the legacy. This wasn't just a court case anymore. It was a reckoning,